Hi there, my name is Kelsey, and today we're going to be creating a simple calculator program using Tkinter. It might sound a little bit complicated at first, but it's a lot of fun and it's easier than you'd expect once you get into it. So let's get straight on it. So before we begin, you should know that this is an intermediate level project for those who are new to Python. At this point, you should already know the basics of how to use Tkinter and lambda functions, as well as the basics of Python itself, such as creating variables and functions. This program will focus mainly on using the lambda functions, as well as creating a usable GUI or graphical user interface for the program. So to get started, we're going to set up Tkinter. We're going to do this by typing from Tkinter import and then an asterisk. So what this will do is it will import the Tkinter library and program. So that will be the very basis of our code, and without that it would not run. So after that, all we're going to do is we're going to define our expression. So we do this the same way we would any variable. So expression equal to, and we want it to be blank, so we're just going to put some quotation marks there. So I'm just going to comment that so that we know what that is when we get back to it. So that's our defined expression. Okay, so now that we have our expression and we've imported Tkinter, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to define our number press code. So we're going to do this by typing def, and then we're going to type press, and then in brackets num. So this will let us know that there's going to be a number. And we'll do our colon so that we know what's happening for that. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a global expression, which is going to be an expression that we can use throughout the whole program. And then we're also going to create our expression as a string, and then we're going to set our equation to equal the expression. So in order to do this, we're going to do global expression, and then we'll add our line setting the expression to a string, so equal to expression, and then we want to set it to a string, so we're going to do plus str num. Whoops, I forgot to make that a new line. So we'll do that. And then after we do that, we're just going to set our equation to be the expression. So we're going to do the dot set, equation dot set, and then expression. So that will just set our equation to the expression that we need it to be. So the next thing that we're going to do, because we have our number press function, is we are going to define our equal press function. So we're going to start by doing def equal press. And then don't forget to add our colon because it's a function definition. And then we're going to use a try and except statement in order to calculate it and try to calculate it, and if something goes wrong, it will display the error message. So we're going to do this by typing try, and then our colon, and then we're going to define a global expression. And then from here, I'm just going to add a line to comment because we're going to calculate the result and make it a string. So this is going to get a result and make it a string so that we can then use it as our expression or equation. So we are going to do from there, we're going to do total is equal to string evaluate, and then in there we're going to put our expression. So what that'll do is that'll basically just make the total into a string That is the evaluated version of the expression that we've had, or the buttons that we've pressed. And then we're going to set our equation to total so that it will display. So it would be equation.set total. Okay, once we've done that, the next thing we're going to do is set the expression to empty. So we're just going to do expression is equal to, and then just some quotes, just the way we had done previously. So now that we're done with our try statement, we need to make our except. So what this will do is that will be our if there's an error, the error message will be shown. So that will just show us an error message if something's wrong with the calculation, or if you've inserted some buttons that can't be pressed together or that don't form a proper equation. So we're going to do our except, and then from there, all we're going to do is we're going to set equation to error and our expression to blank. So your error message could be anything you want. I'm just doing a simple error, but you're free to change it to whatever you want. And then we're going to set our expression to blank again. And there we have our try state. Sorry, our express state. So that is the full equal press defined. And now we're just going to work our way onto our clear function. So to do this, we're just going to do exactly what we've done for everything else. F clear with the brackets and the colon. And then we're going to make our global expression. Whoops, I had an extra E. So that will once again make it so that the function can be used everywhere. And then we're going to set expression equal to just blank again. And then because we want our equation to be blank again, we're just going to do equation dot set and then blank. So what this will do is when we press the clear button, it'll run this function, and all it'll do is it will set expression to nothing and set the equation to nothing. So that will just clear everything that we have so far. And you'll see, if we run this right now, nothing will happen because we don't have any of the GUI set up. So now that we're done with that, it's time to set up the GUI. So what we're going to do is we're going to create the GUI window, which is going to be the window where the calculator is going to be. We're also going to prevent the window from being resized or to mess up the formatting, and then set up where each of the buttons are going to be. And you'll notice later on that I've also added a line at the end to affect the background color so that we have good contrast between the buttons. So in order to do that, we're going to make an if statement. So we're going to do if name is equal to, whoops, main. Then what it'll do is it will run everything underneath that. So we're going to start by create a GUI window. Oops. It keeps giving me Windows error, but that's not what we want to do. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're just going to import the GUI. So GUI is equal to TK. So this will import it from Tkinter. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to set the dimensions and title. So we'll do GUI.geometry, and then we're going to set the dimensions we want. So I want mine to be 385 pixels by 180 pixels. So that's what I've decided to use for here. So after that, we have our GUI geometry, and we're going to set the title. So GUI.title, and then I'm just going to set mine to simple calculator. So you'll see if we were to run that, we'll wait for it to load. Sometimes this might take a while depending on your internet speed and how much code you have. You'll see we have a very basic window just titled Simple Calculator. So what we're going to do next is we're going to prevent the window from being resized, because that would just mess up our format a little bit, and it's easier if we just do it this way. So to do that, we'll just do GUI.resizeable, and then we're just going to do 0, 0, because that will make it so that it can't be resized. And then finally, the last part of this basic GUI setup is going to be to set the background color. So I like to use the color Snow 2. There's a library you can use if you want to pick any color you want. So I'm just going to do GUI.configure, and then in brackets, background is equal to Snow 2. So that's the settings that I have for that. So the next thing that we've done is, once the calculator has been created, we need to make the expression field, which is the part of the window where our expression will show up. So we can do that by typing, well, first of all, we're going to create a string var class. This will make a string variable, and it can be used later on. So we're going to do that by doing equation is equal to string var, and then our brackets. I'm just going to scroll down here so that we have a bit more room for our code. And then next, what we're going to do is we're going to create our expression field. So this is just going to be the area in the window. It will come up about over here, where our solutions and our expression are going to be displayed. So we can do that by doing expression underscore field is equal to entry, and then GUI text variable equals equation. So all that will do is it tells the program that the text that goes in there is going to be our equation variable. So you'll see that if we run it now, we won't have much happen because we haven't set any of the dimensions for it. So that's why we have an error. Let's investigate what's going on there. Okay, so it says we have an error with our text variable. So let's see. Oh, okay, so the mistake is that I accidentally added a capital letter. So see, if we run that, the error is gone. Okay, so once we've got that done, all we're going to do is we're going to create the expression box and sizing. So I'm just going to make another comment, sizing, and we'll get right on ahead with that. So to do this, we're going to use our expression field, and then we're going to do dot grid, because that will allow us to choose the size, and then in brackets, column span, and then we'll make it 4 because I want my calculator to have 4 columns. And then we're going to do our padding. So to do that, we're going to do iPad X for the x-axis is equal to 100. And all that will do is that will set up our box. So we'll see if we run that, you'll see we have our box here where everything will show up. So now that the variable set up and all of our GUI basics are complete, it's time to start with the buttons. So what you're going to want to do before this is you might want to plan out where you want your buttons to be, because we're going to be using a grid system of columns and rows to determine where each button is. So for example, I've decided to have buttons 1, 2, 3, and plus on the first row, 4, 5, 6, and minus on the second row, 7, 8, 9, and asterisk from multiplication on the third, 0, decimal, equal, and the division slash on the fourth, and the clear button right in the middle on the fifth. So that's completely up to you. You can decide what you want to do for that, but that's just the way I wanted to label it. So button. So I'm just going to create a bit more space here so that we know that this is a separate section of the code. It's not necessary, but it's something that I find a lot easier to keep track of. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create our first button. So I'm going to name button 1, button 1. So button 1 is equal to button, and then in brackets, we're going to do GUI, and then we're going to do text, and then whatever we want the text to be for. So I want mine, equal, and then whatever text we want. So I want just the number 1, something simple, and that's what I'm going to do. And then next what we're going to do is we're going to set our foreground and background colors. So for the foreground, or the actual text itself, I want black. So I'm going to do FG, and then in quotes, black. And then BG for background is equal, I did not mean to put extra brackets there. That should be, okay, I don't know what's going on there. Okay, so we have our FG is equal to black, and then we have our BG, or background, is equal to, and I'm going to do gray 65, because that's the color that I like for mine. So then, from there, we're going to add our comma, and I'm just going to start a new button. So from there, I'm just going to do my command. So I'm going to do command is equal to lambda. And remember, at this point, you should be fairly familiar with lambda functions. So they're anonymous functions that we can use to simplify our code. It doesn't take all of the definition, and it's a lot more convenient. So you'll see these are very useful. And then we're going to use our press function. So press, and then whatever number it is, this one's number 1, so we're going to do that. And then we're going to do height is equal to 1. And then I'm going to do width is equal to 7, because that's how wide I want mine to be. And then what we're going to do now is we're going to define the grid for this. So we're going to do button 1.grid, and then you'll define which row and column you want it in. So I want mine to be in row 2 in column 0, because I want it to be most to the left-hand side. So we'll see if we run this, and if there's no errors, it should put the number 1 button right there. So you'll see if you work with that you'll have button 1 right there. So because this took a while to code, I'm just going to copy and paste it to make the rest of our buttons, and then we'll go in and change each value. So I'm going to do button 2. So all we're going to do is anywhere where we have a 1, I'm just going to change it to a 2. You can obviously type it out yourself if you prefer to do that. I just personally prefer to do it this way because I find it a lot faster and it's a lot more convenient. And as I mentioned before, I want numbers 1, 2, 3, and the plus button in the first row. So we're going to keep the row the same, and column is just going to be 1. And that is it for this button. So now let's get on to button 3. So we'll change all of the 1s to a 3. And you'll see this will work just the same as it would if we retyped it. It's just a little bit more convenient. And because we want this to be a different column, we're going to remember to change the column to column 2. And usually I would have 1, 2, 3, and then a plus, but because the plus, minus, asterisk for multiplication, division, those are all operations, I'm going to save those for the end just for the sake of continuity. So now I'm on to button 4. You'll see I'm just going through and doing the same thing. And also don't forget to change the number that's in the press. That way it will make sure that you're pressing the correct button. And for this one, because I only want 1, 2, and 3 on the first row, the row is going to be 3 and column is going to be 0. So you'll see if we run this, you see we have our 1, 2, and 3, and then we have button 4 down there. So we'll just keep going. I'm going to make buttons 5 and 6 right now. And you'll, whoops, sorry, that's a 5. And you'll see as we go on, this will continue to create the buttons in there as a grid. And you'll see our calculator start to take shape. So as you can see, I'm just going through and I'm editing all of the rows, the names, which button is pressed, all that. So there we have button 6, and then 7. We'll go ahead and do that. So as you can see, this is a lot more simple than it looks once you have the original lambda function as well as the setup complete. So I'm just going to go through and make my edits here, and we'll notice that I want my 7 on row 3. So I'm going to do that. The column is still going to be 0, and then we can keep going. I'm going to copy this one just so that we have the row the same, and we'll keep going from there. So we have button 7 and 8. And once you get into this part, you'll definitely get the hang of it. It's fairly simple. All I'm doing is I'm going in and I'm changing all of these values. So you'll see if we run it now, we should have our okay, so I see we have a slight issue with the numbers. So what's happening here is they are overlapping a little bit. So the reason this is happening is because we have row 2, 2, 2, and then we have button 4. Okay, so as we can see, the error that I have made here is we have our buttons 1, 2, 3, and then 4 is in row 3, and then I forgot to change the rows of these. So we'll have 4, 5, 6 on row 3, and then we'll move to row 4. And if we have fixed all of this, you'll see it should be back to normal. So we have our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then all we need to do is create our 9, 0, and then our plus and minuses. So I'm just going to copy that, Control V. I'm going to add an extra space so that we have that right. And just going to go through and change everything. So as you can see, it's very easy to forget to change the rows, so that's something you're going to need to make sure to keep track of a little bit better than I did. So as we know, 9 is still in the same row, but it's going to be in column 2 instead. And now we're done with buttons 1 through 9. So now we're going to do button 0. It's just going to be the same. And then after we're done with 0, we're going to get onto our operators. So 0 is going to be in row 5, in column 0. And we'll see once we get this done, and you run it, you should have all of your numbers there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 0. So what we're going to do now is, now that we have all of those, we're going to make our operator buttons. The first button that I'm going to do is I'm going to work my way down. So I have my plus button in the first row. So I'm going to just change the names to plus. That way it's just clear exactly which button this is. And then for text, you can either write the word plus, or I like to use the symbol. And then for our press, you'll notice we can't just put the number, we're going to have to do a string and then the plus sign. So this is just something we're going to need to keep in mind. So I want my plus to be on row 2, and we already have buttons 1, 2, and 3 in columns 0, 1, and 2, so that leaves column 3 empty for the plus sign. So you'll see if we do this and we run it, we should have our plus button show up right there. So what we're going to do is I'm going to copy this and I'm going to use it to create our minus, multiply, divide, and decimal buttons. So here we're going to do our minus, and then we're just going to do the minus symbol. And it's important to remember, as I mentioned earlier, you're going to need these quotes on there because it's going to be a string. Minus. And then right now we want the column to be the same, still in column 3, but it's going to be one row down. So we're just going to do row 3. Now we're on to our multiply. So I'm going to do my asterisk for that. You could do an X if you wanted to. I'm just using the asterisk so that it's easier to visualize, and because it matches the one we would put in for our actual operations itself. So now we're going to change the row to 3, and you'll see if we run this, we should have plus, oh, and I see what I did, I forgot to change the row. So you'll see if we run that now, we'll have our plus, minus, and multiplication all in their proper places. So now that we're done with that, we're just going to get on to our division. So I'm just going through and doing the exact same thing. This part's going to be fairly simple for you because it's just the exact same thing. You're just going through and changing what's happening. However, you're just going to change the rows for each time. So this one I want row 5, and you'll see if we run that, we'll have plus, minus, multiply, and divide there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do my decimal. So I'm going to do decimal, decimal, press, and then we're just going to add our period in for that. And then we want our decimal to be in row 5 and column 1 because I want it to be directly next to the 0 right in that space. So if we run that, you'll see we have our decimal there, and now we only have 2 more buttons to code. So you'll notice that because we defined equal and clear as functions earlier on, we're not going to use the exact same lambda function that we have for everything over here. So instead, what we're going to do is we are going to use the functions that we created for them in the beginning. So what I'm going to do for that is I'm going to create a new comment that I'm going to call function buttons. That way we know that they're the buttons that we used a function for rather than using the lambdas. So I'm just going to scroll down so that we have more room. And we're going to use the same basic code that we have for all of our buttons. This one I'm going to do equal is button. I'm going to use that. Whoops, sorry, the equal symbol for that. And I want my equal to be in row 5. So I'm going to change the row, and I want it to be in column 2. So it'll go in that space right there. So that's exactly where I'm going to put it. So you see we have row 5, column 2. And the only thing that's going to be different about this one is instead of our lambda command and then press, what we're going to do is we're going to delete that, and we're just going to use our function. So command equals equal press, and then the brackets, because we remember that is our function. So you'll see, whoops, I forgot to rename it down there. So you'll see if we do this and we run it, we should have the equal button show up there. And we have an error message right now, but we haven't fully finished with the code yet, so that's just up there by default. So the next thing we're going to do is copy that, and then we're going to make our clear command. So because everything is case sensitive, I can't remember if I made clear up here when I defined it capital. So we see it's lowercase, so that's what I'm going to use down here. So that's exactly what I'm doing right now. I'm just going through and defining it. And I'm just going to write the word clear on here so that it's very clear what's happening. So you're just going to change your command to clear instead of your equal press, because that should be a lot simpler. And then I want my clear to be on row 6 and column 0. But if we do that, it'll put it down there, and I want mine in the middle. So I'm going to add a column span. Span is equal to, and I'll do 4 columns. So you'll see, if we do that, it should center our clear button right in the middle. So there we go. We have that, and then all that's left to do now, because we've defined all of our buttons, is we're going to do the very end. So we're just going to do GUI.main loop and then brackets. So what that should do is that should just run everything we have. So now's the time we can test it out. We can try. Okay, we'll see that we can use this calculator, and it is completely functional. So you could do 9, it's just going to take a little while to load, times 9, and then equal, and it'll give you the answer, so 81. It works with basically anything. You could also do the reverse, so 81 divided by 9 is equal to 9. So you'll see it'll give us our answer in a float, but that's exactly what we did. If we wanted it to be anything different than that, we could use the double slash for division. But here we have it. Here's your very simple calculator problem. Feel free to give this a try on your own, and hopefully it goes well.